This is the 25th anniversary of the National Press Club event that launched the global movement, which has now resulted this morning in the first tranche of information being released by the President and Secretary Hegsteth. So what I would like to suggest is that everything released today is much less important than what's in our archive. So if you go to dpiarchive.com, we'll put a card up in a minute, you'll see we have about 1,000 times more information than that. I will also say that the 2001 National Press Club event had much more information in it than all the congressional hearings that have happened in the last couple of years, significantly more, with significantly more important whistleblowers. So I'd like to thank all of you for coming and thank my assistant Raven for setting this up. Our whole project is me and my wife and one full-time staff member, and all these people, other people you see are volunteers. So let's thank them for their we don't have Mr. Hegsteth's budget of $1.5 trillion. No, we don't. So I wish we did. At least 0.001% of it, this would be solved a long time ago. But it is very touching. You know, this 25 years ago, you're going to see a little video clip summary of that 2-hour event where there were 20 top secret guys disclosing things. And in reality, Disclosure Project began on December 13th, 1993. Remember that date. And that's when I was asked to brief the director of the CIA for Bill Clinton. And Mr. Clinton had made inquiries into this matter and had been denied access, which is what happened to Mr. Obama. When you see this clip where he says, yeah, they exist, but I never got to get to the bottom of it. That's what happened, you know, because we had briefed him, but through official channels, he got nothing. And he is not lying about that. People think he's lying. He is not. So this, when I had this happen, as a young emergency trauma doctor with 4 little kids, I realized, my God, there is a criminal, unconstitutional program keeping all of this secret. And of course, by then I had figured out why. Because if this information comes out honestly and fully, we'll start a new civilization with no need for the Straits of Hormuz. No oil, no coal, no nuclear power. And within 20 years, no poverty on the planet. However, it also is going to be a $1,000 trillion to $2,000 trillion asset removal if you add all those assets up. So we're going to talk about, frankly, what needs to happen towards the end of how this is going to come out and the transition our civilization must go through in the next couple of years if we're going to make it through to the next 1,000. And that is how consequential disclosure is. So before any further ado, I'd like to introduce our courageous people. I have to say that these men who are here are the heroes. I've just been the facilitator of this for 35 years. And to my left is Michael Herrera, Marine, former Marine. And to his left, Jaime Maussan, who's a renowned researcher from Mexico. And he is the only man on Earth that has retrieved a non-human extraterrestrial device and kept it secure from SWAT teams getting it. And that's what we're researching. He did it. Here we have Roderick Castle, also a former Marine, with an amazing story he will share with you. And then we have 2 of our best, the Green Beret Special Forces, Randy Anderson and Mike Batista. Oh, and I'm Dr. Stephen Greer. Anyway, so, and This is President Trump's full unredacted briefing document given to him and his administration November of 2024. This. It's unredacted. Now, I will tell you that that information and the summary, I was told I had to do a one-sheet summary for the president, and it included the executive orders you're about to see today. It has resulted in where we are now with the first tranche, and thank you, Mr. President, for fulfilling your promise on that, even though it's not much in that file yet. We're told it's just the beginning. But that's why we want to keep the pressure on. Now, I have to say the timing of this is weird. We planned this months ago and announced this date, and my phone blew up yesterday that the White House was going to dump all this material this morning. So for the media, it's not a coincidence that happened, because there are people close in the administration that we've been ferrying this information to, including the Secretary of Defense and the Vice President, Director of National Intelligence, and folks like that. I also want to thank the members of Congress who have stepped up to the plate, Ms. Luna and Mr. Burleson, Mr. Burchett, and many others, people in the Senate Intelligence Committee that I provided information to, in the SCIF at the Senate Intelligence Committee. There are many, many fine people who are trying to get to the bottom of this. The problem is, and this I want to be clear about, there are two governments. There's the government you know about, we elect and appoint. There's a shadow or secret government that is actually running this. And that is not a conspiracy theory. It's a fact. We can prove it. And what that means is, routinely, presidents, SecDefs, and others, they will get the most superficial information on this, whereas the code word level special access projects, top secret, special compartment information, is something they never can penetrate, because it's operating outside the constitutional chain of command. I cannot say that more clearly. And that was the conclusion we reached in 1993. Not because I was Googling conspiracy theories, but because I met and briefed the director of the CIA, who told me point blank that he and the president were denied access. Okay, this is a serious problem for our country and for the world. So when the most important issue in the history of the human species comes up, and you have the rule of law completely subverted by an unelected, unsanctioned group, we can have our phones off, please. Then I think this is a real problem for us as a people. So I think that my biggest problem in the 35 years that I've been doing this is to get people to understand, who are in high office, that you're not going to get access unless you go do a workaround. And so what I've been trying to do is to be a bridge between, right now, over 760 top secret whistleblowers from every agency, Department of Defense, corporations, get their information to people in government, here and abroad, and particularly to people in national security and intelligence circles who want to know this information but are denied access. That is the primary purpose of why I left my medical career, to do it, because I realized they didn't have access, and it was a mistake that people were making to think they did. Now, this is something I would have not have known if I had not taken many, many meetings with key people in the Pentagon. We're talking admirals, generals, senior cabinet level people, ministers of defense elsewhere. And in every single case, sometimes in tears, they would say, we have no access to these programs, but we know they're going on. Now, this is a problem that has to get rectified if we're going to go forward as any kind of democracy. I mean, otherwise it makes a mockery of the rule of law. Okay, so that's the biggest problem, that people have wrapped in their minds around that. So what I would want to do, if I were the president, would to send out a special team of folks, this is happening, who do penetrate these covert programs based on the intelligence we have provided. And that is happening. So what you're going to see coming out from the White House and the Secretary of War and others is the tip of an iceberg that they now know is true. And it's probably a trial balloon, and it's probably testing of the waters and the markets and the public. But there's a lot more that they already have. You know what it is? I'm not going to betray any confidences on that. I'll simply say that they're in the right direction and they have acquired material, let's say physical material and proof. And it's a lot more than lights in the skies that they released today, much more. Now, what I'm here to do today, which I didn't know I was going to be doing this after the fact, we were going to do this kind of preemptively, as we were talking about at dinner last night with the whistleblowers, is to sort of lay down a marker what the standard is that has to come out. Right? Okay, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. Right? That's what has to come out. So that's what we're working on, and it is going forward. And I would just say, those of you who have seen the materials, how many people have seen what was released today? Probably everybody here. It's all over the news. It is a infinitesimal amount of the information that I know that is in some quarters within the Director of National Intelligence Office and other places. So I think that we have to be patient. I think they're putting their toe in the water and see that if their toe gets bitten off, right? You know, how the sharks that are out there. And this brings up another question. Is the Senate is considering a bill to sort of ramp up whistleblower protection. That needs to happen. It needs to include federal witness protection and marshals. The whistleblowers up here today will share you some amazing material and information. But keep in mind, it's a tiny fraction of what we have, all right? Because these folks were at facilities when they saw events happen. They were not running the programs. They were not in the command structure running the programs. We have those people, including CEOs of Fortune 50 companies and everything else, but they are afraid for their lives. And I'm not trying to be melodramatic. They are. And we have to protect them. So the government of the United States needs to step up to the plate and do the right thing and muscle up the security around these high value whistleblowers, of which we have dozens. Now, there are others, we call them hostile witnesses, that are also on the list that I've given to the White House and to certain members of Congress to be subpoenaed. So far, there has not been a hearing where they have activated the subpoena process. That needs to happen immediately now that this is coming out from the administration. And we have a very extensive list of names of people who need to be subpoenaed and put under oath. And if they lie, they go to prison, right? That's it. Yeah. So I just wanted to, with that breaking news today, wanted to sort of frame things for us. And then we're going to show a little video just as a trip down memory lane. If you guys can show that. You know, this is from the
technologies connected to UFO and extraterrestrial vehicles, if declassified and used for peaceful energy generation and propulsion, would solve the looming energy crisis definitively.
My name is John Callahan. I'm a retired FAA employee. I was the division manager for the Accidents Evaluation and Investigation Division in DC. About 2 years before I retired, I received a call from Alaska region where the region wanted to know what to tell the media. When I questioned, tell the media what, he says about the UFO. Now, I've told this story many times, and I get sometimes funny looks from people. I have with me the voice tapes of the controllers that were involved, the FAA original tapes. See, after we handed this stuff off to the president's staff, the FAA didn't know what to do with it. We don't separate UFOs from real traffic, so it's not our problem, okay? I have a copy of the original of the video that we took.
Good morning. My name is Dwayne Arneson. I served 26 years as a communication electronics officer in the U.S. Air Force, all over the world, including Vietnam. I was lucky to be selected to be commander of 3 different units in the Air Force. I held the top secret SCI TK clearance, and for those who don't know, it is slightly above top secret. Is that a UFO was seen near the missile silos and the missiles were deactivated.
Good morning. My name is Carl Wolf, and I was a precision electronics photographic repairman with a top secret crypto clearance in the United States Air Force. I was stationed at Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. By the way, we've discovered a base on the backside of the moon. And then he proceeded to put photographs down in front of me, and clearly in these photographs were structures, mushroom-shaped buildings, spherical buildings, and towers.
Hi, my name is George Filer III. I'm a retired intelligence officer and flyer with almost 5,000 hours. Senior Master Sergeant in charge said that there had been UFOs in the pattern all night. They're on radar. The tower had seen them. They got in aircraft reports and so on. And that one had landed or crashed at Fort Dix. Fort Dix and McGuire are right together. And this is kind of like the Roswell of the East. But in any case, an alien had come off the craft and had been shot by a military policeman and apparently was wounded and was heading for McGuire.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Clifford Stone. I was Sergeant First Class, United States Army. I had a secret clearance with nuclear surety. What I'm referring to here is that I was involved in situations where we actually did recoveries of crashed saucers, for lack of a better term, debris thereof. There were bodies that were involved with some of these crashes, also some were alive.
My name is Mark McCandlish, and for the last 21 years, I have worked as a conceptual artist for a variety of defense contractors. In 1988, in November, a college buddy of mine, an associate by the name of Brad Sorensen, informed me that he had personally witnessed 3 flying saucers at a very large hangar at Norton Air Force Base during the course of an air show that was held on Saturday, November 12, 1988. These discs were hovering off the floor without any visible means of support. They were referred to as alien reproduction vehicles, also nicknamed the flux liner because they used high voltage electricity.
And we have to prevent the weaponization of space because there is a lie being told to everyone that the weaponization of space is now first being based upon the evil empire, the Russians. There are many enemies, he said, against whom we're going to build this space-based weapon system. The first of whom was the Russians, which was existing at that time. Then there would be terrorists. Then there would be third world countries. Now we call them rogue nations or nations of concern. Then there would be asteroids. And then he would repeat to me over and over. And the last card would be the extraterrestrial threat. Well, at the time, I kind of laughed when he said asteroids, and when he said extraterrestrials, I knew I wasn't going to deal with that subject. And now we hear on the news just today, this week, that they've slid in another enemy. Only this time we're going to protect our satellites. In other words, we have to have some reason to spend these trillions, to waste these dollars on a space-based weapon system, and they're all lies.
Okay, so 20 people stood up and did this 25 years ago. Most of them have passed away. There are a couple still living. Miss Rosen, who you just saw, was the spokesperson for Wernher von Braun, who invented the first rocket for Germany in World War II, and then became foundational for our aerospace programs, as you know, under Operation Paperclip, where they were, key German genius level engineers and scientists were brought into the United States rather than being executed by us at the end of World War II. And Wernher von Braun was one of them. So she became his confidant last 5 years of his life, and he warned that they would and have been hoaxing a threat that is alien. So next.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
Next. Just play these.
A shadowy government with its own Air Force, its own Navy, its own fundraising mechanism, and the ability to pursue its own ideas of the national interest, free from all checks and balances, and free from the law itself.
Think about what he said back in the 80s. Now, there was a young student who became a lawyer who worked with Senator Inouye, who later had a conversation. He says, yes, he had seen the 2001 National Press Club event. Every word of it was true. And the people running it is part of this shadow, illegal, unconstitutional government that he was referring to here. Very important for people to understand that. There are people who do know this, but there's great intimidation to keep their mouths shut. So Senator Inouye never went forward with his knowledge about the UFO issue. I think if he was alive today with what's happening out of the White House and Congress, he would. But he's no longer with us. So one thing I want to say this is foundational in this first few minutes. This is what nobody understands in the media and Congress, except for one or two people. We're talking about three different things going on. There are non-human extraterrestrial vehicles, bodies, civilizations. They are completely non-hostile. If they were hostile, we'd be gone when we detonated the first atomic bomb. Number two, the majority of all objects that are seen, photographed, chased by our military, our legal military, are man-made craft coming out of the Lockheed Skunk Works, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, SAIC, Booz Allen Hamilton, and a number of other prime contractors, the list of which we have and have been given to law enforcement and to the executive branch in Congress. The other category, and that's completely confused, is what are called interdimensional intelligences. Now, let me unpack this for just a minute. I know because this has caused Congresswoman Luna and the Vice President to make some statements that are not true. But this gets into more than we can get into today, dealing with the physics of interstellar travel. But let me just say that if you go beyond the speed of light, you're not doing it in a linear fashion. You are creating an electromagnetic field where that craft and everyone in it drops out of linear space-time into another dimension, traverses through that dimension to another point, and it's called quantum entanglement, where, the spooky effect Einstein talked about, where the same particle will be in two places at once. So this contangled universe where every point in space-time is connected to every other point in space-time. And that is how we're doing it. But when they're in transit, or if they are shifted, they could be in the atmosphere and shifted out of 3D, they're in another dimension, but they don't originate from that dimension. They're transiting it. Does this make sense? So I call them trans-dimensional interstellar civilizations. Now, because some of the phenomena dealing with ghosts, goblins, demons, angels are similar, theologists and religious people have conflated them. Because phenomenologically, from an observation, empirical point of view, there is some similarity overlap because the ET technologies cross into these other dimensions, operationally, scientifically. Is this clear? I'm trying to be really clear on this without getting into arcane physics. So I think this is why what's happened in the last few months is very disconcerting. Because there are people who are working with the intelligence community, who are in the White House, the Pentagon, CIA, Congress, who are gaslighting and misleading our leaders. And I will be blunt about it. It cannot be allowed to continue. And those people need to be careful what they say, because this is all going to come out now. And if it comes out incorrectly, it'll be 1,000 times worse than COVID. If it comes out properly, it'll be a new civilization and one of the most unifying, beautiful experiences for all of humanity in recorded history. That is how stark the difference is. And this was in the briefing for the president right after he got elected. So we have to be very careful. Next. Now, if you really want to know what's going on this subject, this is where you need to go. The Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive. The URL is dpiarchive.com. Everything is in there. We spent about $500,000 digitizing everything I've collected for 35 years. And it's available to all of you for free. And so you can go through that and see, you'll see that this archive has significantly more information than anything that you will see anywhere else in the world, including the testimony of over 115 top secret whistleblowers. It's in there, their full testimony, their credentials. Now, it's so much, it's almost what Dr. J. Allen Hynek of the Project Blue Book director said, it's an embarrassment of riches. We have so much, but I would recommend for the media and those of you interested in this matter to do a deep dive into this archive. Next. Now, this was released this morning. It's over the moon, and there's a triangular formation of 3 bluish lights. We have thousands of images way better than this, but this is the best of what was released today. Next. And in contrast, you'll see the one in the upper left. That's from one of our CE5 contact teams. We'll get into this, the psionic mind consciousness technology interface program that I started in 1990. That was a result of that one. You can see the middle one is a non-human intelligence, ET, from another star system that appeared at one of our events, and he was 2 people away from me. He popped in, and David Marconi, who wrote Enemy of the State, took this photo. I said, David, there's a guy standing right here. Boom, there it was. Transdimensionally came in. It's not from another dimension, it's physical. Their craft are physical, but when they're partially in this dimension, you could get it confused with an apparition or a ghost or some other phenomenon. You have to understand the physics of transdimensional interstellar travel. It's not your granddad's Oldsmobile. It just isn't. All right, and the bottom one is one that came out of Los Alamos from the time of the Roswell crash, and they had archives brought in, and this is a dissection of an ET on a slab from the 1920s. It's been dated to the 1920s. This is one of the pictures in the briefing document for the president. I don't often show it. It's a bit gruesome. There's a towel over the head. The archive is filled with this sort of information. And they came from a woman whose grandmother was at the Trinity program and made the atomic bomb program, and then got moved to Roswell because that was the only atomic bomb in the world when that craft crashed in the Roswell area in 1940s. So that when she died, her granddaughter was going through some old books in the attic, and this photo fell out. And apparently there was someone who gave her the photo from the photo lab there in Roswell in the 40s from a prior retrieval of an ET body in the 20s. So the secrecy on this goes back way more than 100 years. Top secret. Code named, code, level special access projects. Next. Here's one of the triangular craft over us. This is a Northrop Grumman or Raytheon device. It's a electrogravitic anti-gravity. And this is what members of Congress I have briefed have had people come in after me and said, do not look into that. It will cost you a lot. Don't look at this. But the biggest secret isn't that we're not alone in the universe. It's that we have programs that have already reverse engineered these technologies, but they have not been used in the national security interest. They have been used in criminal enterprises, including murder, kidnapping, child trafficking, drug running, human trafficking, and other issues. This we can prove. This information from a whole group of military folks who are working with me has been handed over to U.S. law enforcement, and as we speak right now, being investigated. All right. And this beautiful blue boomerang-shaped plasma craft is one that flew in over us at Joshua Tree National Park when I was with Demi Lovato. And we had set up a contact protocol out there. This is way more interesting than I think the best photo of what was released today, don't you? Anyway, next. So let's play this. Here's something that was released by Congressman Burleson. I had seen it before he released it. And you'll see a sphere intercepted by a Hellfire missile. Now, This event was friendly fire. It was not an extraterrestrial device. That sphere was us. Now, the operators, here is a real problem. The first time I briefed the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, they were not read into this. And I said, your military aircraft and systems are often intercepting and having close calls, not with alien vehicles, but with clandestine, covertly made and funded black budget aircraft made by our aerospace giants, but off book, without the knowledge of Congress or the president. And therefore, very few people are read into. So you may have a top secret clearance, and in Washington, that and a couple bucks get you on the metro. But frankly, but it doesn't give you access to those special access projects that are code word compartmented dealing with this. So much of this is centered in corporate, but there are government people, agencies that do have this information, but they often are under orders not to share it with the elected leaders or the cabinet. So this is a dysfunction that has to get corrected, and I know it's being looked at. Next. In contradistinction, this is an actual extraterrestrial sphere, unlike the other one that was man-made. And this is in Buga, Colombia. You're going to hear a lot about this towards the end of our press conference. It's very important. In Buga, Colombia, this is what Jaime Mason now has possession of. This object came in and it landed. It got too close to a power line and shorted out, and it's in our possession, his possession. And we have been doing the studies on it, but that is an extraterrestrial technology. It's the first time in history that one has landed and been acquired and then not subsequently been grabbed by a SWAT team of some type. So this is a huge historic opportunity, and it is real. Even though most people on the internet can't believe it, it is real. Next. So here is something that I'm having to say, since people like Robert Bigelow of Bigelow Aerospace and others who were friends with the president have been gaslighting him about this issue. They are saying to do a soft or partial disclosure and cover up most of it. No, that can't happen. Now, there are OPSECs, operational security, dealing with this, right? That is legitimate. You don't want the propulsion systems that make something fly like that in the hands of terrorists. But you cannot deny their existence, because that leaves people open to the myth that all of the people who had contact and had experiences such as abductions and mutilations are encountering aliens when they're encountering our own covert programs. CIA, psychological warfare operations, we're going to prove this today. So once you use an advanced tech on innocent civilians here and around the world, you can't now claim to keep it secret. That has to be known. Now, you don't need the operating system, just like no one can go down to Ace Hardware and buy a nuclear bomb or a nuclear trigger, right? But you have to disclose they exist, because they've been used illegally and abusively against the population for decades, since the late 1950s. Next. Now, this is something I want to touch on just very carefully. I know the media here is going to go, oof. All I'm going to say is that one of the most senior people in national security for prior administration, and I met extensively for about 3 hours last year. He has the audio of the video of some files from Epstein Island of key people in our intelligence and national security system. When key, I mean very senior, that are compromised and are being actively blackmailed to slow down or distort disclosure. I'm going to say that. I'm going to let that sit. I will say to the Department of Justice, if you want to inquire into this and pursue it, because we're talking blackmailing officials at the highest level, that is interfering with the function of government. So that is what Epstein Island was. It was a honeypot set up by the intelligence community to entrap certain high-value targets and then control them through that process of blackmail. This happens all the time. Everyone knows J. Edgar Hoover had huge files on everyone. every mistress for every president. That's how he stayed in office. But this is serious. This is something that can really affect the truth of what gets to the president and Congress, or whether things are allowed to come out. So this is something that has to get nipped in the bud. I won't say who the officials are who are compromised, where I got the information, or who's doing the blackmailing, but I know the two senior former government officials doing the blackmailing. I know both of them. All right, next.
Are aliens real?
They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in what is it?
Area 51?
Area 51. There's no underground facility unless there's this enormous conspiracy, and they hid it from the president of the United States.
Okay, so you all know he had to walk that back, but what he said there was true. And it wasn't because, it was because we had put together, and I'd provided to John Podesta, who had put together the cabinet and had been chief of staff of Clinton, a huge file, a thing like this one. And so he knew it was real, but he never, through the chain of command, got access. So he wasn't lying. Now, Trump later castigated him on Air Force One. He was flying, and he said he shouldn't have said that. And that's top secret. And that prompted him to then issue this statement, which I won't read to you. You know it, where the president ordered the Secretary of War Hegstead to start releasing files and to do it as soon as possible. And of course, it says any and all information connected to these highly complex, but extremely interesting and important matters. So what happened today was just, again, a trial balloon, first little bit. Next. And
You're going to release all the UFO files?
We're working on it.
We saw
And you know me.
We saw
aliens.gov. I don't think they're aliens. I think they're demons anyway, but that's a long discussion.
all right. I just want to address this for just a moment. I had to go, Benny Johnson is a big podcaster and friends with the vice president. And when this happened, my phone blew up from all over the world. And of course, there are certain elements of like the Opus Dei group at the Catholic Church and other groups that have been pushing the aliens or demons agenda for 50 years. He is a Catholic. I respect people's faith, but you cannot confuse an extraterrestrial advanced civilization with a demon or an angel. It's very dangerous for somebody one heartbeat away from the Oval Office to speak this way, because this is how we end up in World War III that's interplanetary, which is what the CIA has been wanting for decades. They keep the fires burning, they provide disinformation, they brainwash people with nonsense, and that statement has got to be retracted. Now, let me explain how this has evolved. I was on the show, the Benny Johnson show, a week later, and I laid this out. One of the things that the vice president said, and this is a common mistake. You see this little thing? What it is? Smartphone. So what? But if you took this back and showed Thomas Jefferson, my farm out in the country near his house, and you showed him this, it would be supernatural. So what the full clip was, he said, because these are behaving supernaturally, they're demons. But remember, everything we're using in this room right now would be supernatural to someone 500 years ago. An airplane would be impossible, defying gravity, right? If you were to show a video on a cell phone to people in Salem, Massachusetts, you'd be burned at the stake as a witch, okay? This is not okay to say something like that. This is a serious national security matter. It cannot devolve into the lunatic fringe of those kinds of theologies, because what are we going to go gallop pell-mell back to the 7th century? We might as well be the Ayatollahs in Iran. This can't happen. I'm sorry to come on strong on this, but this is very dangerous stuff. Now, is there a theological and spiritual aspect of this? Yes, because the whole universe is a conscious quantum hologram, the whole creation. I believe in God. I believe in the prophets. I don't have a problem with that. But there are different phenomena. And one of the things I want to leave you with on this, because I could go on all day long, we have other things to do. When I was at the Vatican with Pope John Paul, senior theologian, Monsignor Balducci, I was in his apartments overlooking St. Peter's. And this issue came up then. This would have been in 1995, 6, 7. And he was himself a demonologist. His specialty were demons, believe it or not, at the Vatican. And he laughed when this came up. He said, look, neither angels nor demons need flying saucers. He put it so simply, and it's true. So people need to be careful. You're going to hear so many theories about what this is. And this interdimensional demon part of it is a deliberate gaslighting by senior people in these covert illegal programs to prey on the religious beliefs of certain people. And unfortunately, that's what's happened to the vice president and Tucker Carlson and a few other people. This needs to get corrected. Congressman Luna has also been deceived this way. I know the people who have targeted her with these wrong ideas. And a couple of them have been turned over to law enforcement for investigation for various crimes and felonies. But I think this is why we have to be careful what words we use matter right now as this comes in. Okay, next, the screen went blank. My screen's blank. So I just want to quip, this has been in the media in the last month a great deal. General McCaslin, there you go. He was a Wright-Patterson Air Force Base general that dealt with a lot of very dark projects related to this. He is missing. The guys I work with who are senior military operators from various walks of life, and I feel that, and I can't prove this, that the noose was getting close because the people I have been handing over information to in law enforcement and military and national security circles, we have been naming names that I'm not naming here today, but very explicit names up to and including people who have ordered what are called wet works, targeted assassinations of leakers and whistleblowers and things like that. And in the aerospace corporations, we know who some of those people are. Their names have been handed over and are being actively investigated for serious crimes, including murder, extrajudicial killings. So in this case, I think General McCaslin, in all likelihood, vanished himself as opposed to being taken. Now, there are scientists missing. Amy Estridge, for example, had worked on and developed an electrogravitic anti-gravity, if you will, type system. And if you look at our documentary, The Lost Century, that we released 3 years ago, we document, since for over 100 years, is what I call Lost Century, very brilliant scientists who have been killed or have been imprisoned or set up in scams to take out their inventions. This is why we're still using oil, gas, coal, nuclear, wind, solar, plug-in electric cars. If we had the technologies running a UFO, even the ones made by my uncle's old company, Northrop Grumman, you would never have, it would be an energy source coming from what's called the 0-point energy field around us. So these guys understand this, right? And so General McCaslin, though, was very much involved in some dark projects. We know he was the man who intercepted this rock star that I had briefed when he was a young kid named Tom DeLonge and handed him off to Luis Elizondo, where he was then chewed up and spindled and mutilated and spit out. And McCaslin has been an operative on this for a long time. So I think he may have just vanished himself. Okay, now I can't prove it, but that's our working theory as at this point. And where he is, nobody knows. Next. I just want to show you from the archive. If you go on the dpiarchive.com, you will see this map. These are the black sites that we've been able to document from whistleblowers, the nearly 1,000 whistleblowers I've debriefed over the last 35 years. And the ones that are key, it will be in the next slide, and you'll see this summary. Now, this is what I've asked the administration and members of Congress to focus on, are these top tier ones, right? And the top tier ones, Dugway, Edwards, Wright-Pat, not Nellis Air Force Base per se, but the Northern Nevada test area. Area 51 is not particularly relevant, by the way. It's an old site, and the real actions moved up to Area 54, 53, some in 52. Those are grids on a map, okay? So that's what you want to realize, is that We update this map as we get new intelligence from whistleblowers and sources who are defecting. And this is your guide. Now, the corporations involved, you can see those. I'm not going to read them all. We don't have time. But this is in the briefing document. And by the way, there is this document, the redacted version of it you can get from us. You can just order it. And it has everything but the sensitive, some of the tactical information, and then some of the sensitive names that have to be redacted for the public, okay, or out. But everything else is in there. This is in there. So I would suggest if you really want to know where these assets are and where the underground bases are, you go through that. Now, we have been able to map down to the entry points of many of these places, both at the Dugway Proving Grounds in Utah, Edwards Complex, the Lockheed Skunk Works, Northrop Grumman Test Range, the facilities out in Tonopah and going up to Groom Lake and Pahoo Mesa. We know where those places are. We know where the assets are, and most of them are underground, and they're very large underground facilities. I'm told the one that's in the Utah complex associated with Dugway is about 1,300 square miles under the earth. That big, huge, massive. And it's been built by contractors like Bechtel Corporation using a nuclear-powered tunneling device. And we have the schematic for that device that's in our archive that was developed in the 1960s. So when they started building these vast underground complexes, that's what they used. It was a nuclear-powered tunneling device. Next. This I just went through. That's the cover page. Next. So here are the actions that we've been recommending. Criminal investigation focused on illegal covert government UFOs. That is happening. This is what was in his recommended actions provided to him in November, the president. Both executive and congressional actions are needed to authorize a law enforcement search and seizure of these illegal operations and their assets. This is also begun. These assets include recovered extraterrestrial vehicles, man-made UFOs, and related technologies, extraterrestrial biological entities, even living ETs that are captive and still living. We have people who know where those are, and man-made alien-appearing bodies and robots that are used in false flag operations, such as abductions. Almost all the mythology about the UFO subject is a psychological warfare operation that was run mainly out of the PSYOPs division of the CIA. A key objective would be immediate cessation of the targeting and capture of extraterrestrial vehicles and their occupants, which is known. Now, I understand there is an attempt to stand down those actions, because if they don't get stood down, it's very dangerous. It's been going on since the 40s with directional energy weapons. 3, both executive orders and legislation should support the above recommendations and include a provision for immunity for those currently or previously in these illegal programs who are willing to cooperate fully. What am I saying here? We have many high-value assets that have been involved in criminal activities, and they need a letter of non-prosecution from the Department of Justice, an attorney general, to protect them from prosecution so they can cooperate, and they want to cooperate. So this is how you make a deal, okay? The art of the deal. Here's the cosmic deal, all right, Washington. We need to extend letters of immunity to some of these people. Next. A diplomatic initiative should be immediately started to make peaceful contact with any and all ET civilizations visiting the Earth. They should be viewed as a permanent national and international diplomatic mission, the goal of which is to full rapprochement with ET civilizations. This has never happened. It started to happen in the early 50s with Eisenhower. It got shut down, and we need to start that back up. Now, our CE5, or Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind Contact Initiative, has been doing that formally for 36 years, but it's an ad hoc public diplomatic group. It's diplomacy. You can get the app CE5 Contact on your app stores, but it's not alone the universe. It's being acknowledged. Now we need to get serious about not just the United States, but other countries creating a safe space and a protocol for contacting these civilizations rather than just tracking them and blowing them out of the skies, which is what's been going on since the 40s. An executive order is needed targeting and downing of NHI craft and any other acts of hostility towards them. An international agreement removing and banning all weapons from space and the use of advanced reverse engineered technologies as weapons should be negotiated with enforcement capabilities in place globally. Why do I say this? Because OCONUS, outside continental United States, is where a great many of our assets are that are being run by a sort of a global covert group. And you have to stand them down globally. It's not enough to stand them down just in the continental United States, right? So the organization running these secret programs, think of it as a global hybrid corporate governmental entity that operates with alacrity regardless of your geopolitical borders between Canada, US, Russia, China, whatever. And this is why these objects are seen in Russia and China that are man-made ones. And it is a big problem. So when I've met with people who are tactical operators at a very high level, the big discussion is how do you get that under control and get it under control so that we can have a peaceful world, but also make peaceful outreach to these visitors who mean us no harm. They're here to help and understand us and contain us if we go too far crazy, right? And I'm talking about using technologies that we have that are way beyond the thermonuclear weapon bubble that we have and have been using against them. So the aggressors here, ironically, are the humans. Forget all the Hollywood movies and the UFO mythologies. If they were aggressive, we'd be gone. Okay, next. So now I'd like to introduce Roderick Castle. He's a U.S. Marine Corps veteran who served from 1994 to 1999. He served with the Flying Nightmares, an AV-88 Harrier squadron stationed out of MCS Yuma. His account is very important. Thank you, Roderick.
Hello. My name is Roger John Castle III, prepared to repeat this testimony before Congress or any other legal body. Tonight, I served as an Aviation Ordnance Marine with VMA 513, the Flying Nightmares, an AV-AB Harrier squadron out of Yuma, Arizona. I was an E5 sergeant. He's responsible for the weapons systems and crash response. I deployed aboard the U.S. Bella Wood and the USS Essex. After active duty, I continued serving in the New York Army National Guard and the Air National Guard. And in the aftermath of September 11th, I participated in air defense in New York City. In 1997, during an exercise in the California 29 Palms Marine Corps Air Station, I encountered something outside standard military practices and technology. 6 of our VMA 513 Harrier jets were attached to a special purpose Marine Air Ground Task Force, participating in what was called the Hunter Warrior Advanced Warfighting Experiment. On March 10th or 11th, my team were sent out by the airfield tower to investigate unidentified aerial activity, possibly flares. Myself and 4 Marines headed to the identified spot near Emerson Dry Lake Bed. As we came over a hill approximately 10 miles outside of the main base, we witnessed a large, flat, black mass hovering above the desert floor. It was silent, triangular, approximately 300 feet in length, and it hung in the air roughly 150 to 200 feet above. With no visible propulsion and no heat signature consistent with known aircraft. There were spherical yellow-white lights embedded in each point of the triangle. The lights were not bright, and in the center of the triangle is possibly concave. This is all I was able to observe in those few seconds. On the ground, approximately 200 feet down the hill, were 3 black F-150, 350 type unmarked vehicles and 20 to 30 men armed with rifles and sidearms, dressed in black tactical gear, no insignia, no identifiers. We skidded our Humvee and crash response trailer to a stop and were quickly overtaken by 5 of the men up toward us in an arrowhead formation. Aviation Ordnance Marines do not carry our M16s on us. Our weapons were in the back on a rack. So we were quickly overtaken. We were ordered out of the vehicle with rifles pointed at our heads, pushed against the truck in order to look at the ground. These men had American accents. I knew that at any moment we could be shot in the head and erased in the desert. Approximately 2 to 3 minutes later, in my peripheral vision, I perceived the truck arc upward and then accelerate to the northwest at an incredible speed. The men ran back to their vehicles and the entire team drove away quickly in the same general direction as the triangle. The Humvee would not restart, some battery power, but the engine would not turn over. Upon returning to the base, we were relieved of duty before the shift was over in order to return to our group sleeping area. We were met there by our acting staff sergeant and a warrant officer. The intention was clear. They were there to check on us and to follow orders given from above. We were asked about the flares and we reported that we saw nothing. Myself and my fellow Marines did not discuss the experience. I only received a silent, "What the F?" from my corporal. The sense was we had seen something we should not have seen, that we could have and could still be killed or reprimanded because of it. The following day, I, of course, experienced psychological distress, confusion, anxiety. Then myself and the 4 other Marines received an unscheduled anthrax vaccine, which I'm still trying to get. And then came the interrogation. Approximately a week later, back at Marine Corps Air Station Yuma, I was brought in by NCIS, Naval Crimes Investigative Service, unrelated allegations, theft of computers, charges that ultimately led nowhere. But the intent was clear. We are keeping an eye on you. Following that deployment, myself and the 4 other Marines were assigned to different units. I have attempted to reach out to them, and they either I cannot locate them or they want nothing to do with disclosure, and I respect that. In the years that followed, I dealt with symptoms that many veterans in this space will recognize: PTSD, neurological irregularities, memory disruption. And like many others, I tried to make sense of it in a world that wasn't ready to hear it. And I want to end by saying again, I am prepared to give this testimony to Congress. I did file a report. It's 29 that happened on U.S. soil, and I have still not received a response. Thank you.
Thank you.